This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview. Today, my special guest is Cicely Elliot-Berry. She's the co-owner and founder of Sibling Distillery. Hello there, Cicely.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. Please, I mean, you're not quite well known, you're very well known in the business community already. Can you tell us, please, all about Siblings Gin and Distillery and how it started and your role within the company?
Yeah, of course. So you might notice I'm in a very boring setting. That's because this is our office that we technically have but never use because we're a very hands-on business. So it's me, my two brothers and my sister that run Sibling, hence the name. We started working together in 2014. So when I just left sixth form and my older brother and sister were in jobs that they kind of found, okay, and they enjoyed, but they knew that they didn't want to be in forever. And our youngest brother, Digby, was still in school. And we decided that we had come from a brewing background. So our dad and our mum together ran a microbrewery for quite a long time. So the longest working brewery in Cheltenham. And it was very much a microbrewery though. I always have to put in that disclaimer because everybody, when we started, imagined that we came from some, Fuller's and someone has had this massive kind of budget and put it into us. And we were like, puppets to our parents, business. But we weren't at all. It was very, very different from that, really. Our parents had this microbrewery. They had run it for some years. We always talked about in our family what business we would run if we were to run a business, because we had very much kind of that mentality. Our parents had always worked for themselves in one way or another, kind of everything from, renting out different properties to they ran a really successful artist agency for some years. Our dad is a published author, has written several books and is an artist. Our mum, serial entrepreneur. So we had kind of come from that background, nothing big and fancy and kind of, super impressive in kind of financial terms or anything, but we were from a background of very kind of entrepreneurial spirit, if you like. So we always kind of talked about what we would do if we were to run a business, and basically why it would be better than all the others, because that's what you do when teenagers and siblings, and you always think that you've got the best idea. And we ended up going on holiday one year as a family, which anyone who is part of or knows family businesses knows how rare it is to all go on holiday together. We went together and we were chatting that whole trip kind of about what we would do. And we realised that there was kind of obviously a connection with the brewery and then other kind of drinks and production and stuff like that. And we realised that actually we could stand a chance of getting a distilling license off the back of the fact that we had that already in our family and we already had the premises and things. We could stand a chance of getting a distilling license. But our mum and dad were both like, no, not interested. We've done this for long enough. We want to keep going with this. We're not about to start a new business. And so me and my brothers and sisters just got talking more and more about it on this trip. And kind of over the course of about a week that we were away, we turned from kind of poking fun at this idea to actually kind of trying to find a name for the business and everything else. And by the time we came back, we were quite kind of fired up about the idea. So we decided that when we got back, we would apply for a distilling license. Distilling licenses are notoriously really, really hard to get. It's something that's very rare, and I can kind of tell you more about that if you're interested, but it's very rare to be a full working distillery in the UK. So a distilling license is, it can take sometimes like 2 or 3 years to be granted. Wow. They want to look into all of your background, basically any criminal record. You're creating taxable products, so the government is very interested in who you are and what your history is and things. But also, they need to know that the space that you're in is going to be safe and all these different things. So it can take years. We decided, well, let's apply for one now. I think I just turned 18. We were on holiday for my 18th birthday. So I just turned 18. Then Felix would have been 21 and Clarice would have been 19 at the time. And Digby was 14. So we kind of figured if we apply for the license now, maybe by the time it gets granted, we'll have kind of got our act together a little bit more and maybe we'll be ready to actually start a business. So we'd sent it off. Cheltenham Borough Council basically said, we don't know what to do with these. We haven't had an application for a distillery in over 150 years. Wow. And so they sent it over to Oxfordshire and said, what do you think? And they basically said the same thing. We don't have anyone who knows what to do with these. So they sent it up to Edinburgh. And obviously in Edinburgh, they're a lot more au fait with the distilling processes and everything that goes into it. And they, for whatever reason, obviously our family background, maybe the fact that with our ages, we didn't have much to look into in terms of sort of criminal record and career history and things like that. So we received a full distilling license back within 10 days. And we were very shocked, but very happy. And so we decided, okay, let's try and give this a go. And we knew from the off that it would have to be very small. It was never going to be a great big kind of, what do they call it when someone like comes into an industry and like shakes it all up? But we were never going to be able to do that. We were always going to have to start small and kind of see where we went from there. So we decided to start kind of looking into how we'd make that work. We did that in kind of the most rudimentary way, I guess. The first thing that we needed to do was work out how we could finance things. We didn't ever take on any investment. Unsurprisingly, banks weren't falling over themselves to lend us money to start a distillery as a bunch of teenagers. So we had to be a bit more creative about it. We had the license, that's like the first important thing that you had to have. And then we needed to actually get a distillery. We had managed to convince our parents to let us knock through the ceiling of one of the old, it was like a sales office, but it was never used because our dad hates doing sales. And so we managed to convince them to let us use that room. So then we just had to get the kit. Being very shrewd business people, they'd rent us the room. They didn't just let us have it. But we then had to get the actual distillery. So I don't know, I always hate to sound like I'm being patronizing, but to assume that most people don't know the ins and outs of kind of the industry. Distilling equipment is really, really expensive. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's huge amounts of work that go into creating it, but distilling equipment really starts in the hundreds of thousands, which just was not something that we had. We were working bar jobs and babysitting, dog walking, all those sorts of things, but there was definitely not hundreds of thousands of pounds in our back pockets. So we had to be a bit more creative about it, and we managed to find a guy based in Australia who had created this design for a still, but he had made a tabletop, like a miniature version of it, and he knew that could work, but he'd never had a go at making it in full size. It wasn't his job. He didn't have a commercial interest in it. So it was going to be an expensive exercise for him just out of curiosity. So he decided to kind of work with us and let us be the guinea pigs. And we had absolutely no other options. So we were very willing guinea pigs. And we decided that if we could afford the materials, then he would do all the drawings and have it put together and arrange the manufacturing of it and send it over to us in England. And we'd kind of, launch the design, if you like, and we would kind of be the first sort of guinea pigs to use it. And that was, like I say, that was kind of just a second sort of stroke of luck, if you like. We had the license, which we were very surprised by. And then we managed to find this guy who was kind of willing to take a bet on us, and we were taking a bet on him. And so then it arrived in the UK after several, agonizing months of waiting. I think anyone starting a business, it feels like forever to get things going, but when you're 18, it feels like forever. 3 months is like a lifetime.
What year was this?
2013. So
Yeah.
I was just finished sixth form. So this was, we arranged it before Christmas, and then we had to wait. And then the parts of it were built in China, and there's Chinese New Year and all these sorts of things. So we had to wait ages to get the still to us. Then it came in hundreds of pieces, and our first team building exercise as siblings was to put it together and try and work out how to make it work. And then we taught ourselves how to distill. Well, we had been kind of working on the principles of it before that. You can go to university to learn how to distill, but we had essentially set up the business to avoid going to university. So we weren't about to go to uni to learn how to do it. And so we taught ourselves really with, the millennial way, YouTube, Google. We found online a really amazing resource in American home distillers. So we found that there were people online who had been distilling for 30, 40 years in their, sheds and outhouses in the US, and had a huge wealth of knowledge, but no commercial interest in it. So they were very willing to help us and kind of teach us. And I think probably found us a bit peculiar, really, a group of kind of, baby-faced teenagers trying to do this as a business. And so we were able to learn quite quickly, really. Felix, my brother, one of my brothers, always says, it's kind of like painting a picture, it's easy in principle, but to be really good at it takes a lot of work. So he definitely stole that off someone. That's not his own line. but yeah, it's like that. We learned kind of the basics, and then the still arrived, and then we had to really like hone our skills and kind of get good at it. And actually work out how to make a good gin, not just a gin, and work out what our kind of signature in the industry was going to be. We were very aware that people in the industry, it's an industry that's steeped in heritage, and people who work in distilling can sometimes be a bit old-fashioned and not really like the fact that there are people coming in trying to do things differently. So we were so prepared that people were ready to see us make real idiots of ourselves, that we took the process of developing the gin incredibly seriously. In fact, we put our launch date back twice because we didn't believe that it was like, show-stopping enough at that point, and we wanted it to be like really, really impressive, and for people to kind of believe that we weren't just a novelty act when we launched.
Did you get all of other competitor gins and try lots of gins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of our that was the way that we did it. We were super aware of the fact that our palates weren't going to be the ones to judge if it was market ready, because we were young, and our premium gin drinking knowledge up to that point was really minimal, and so we weren't kind of arrogant enough to believe that we could do it alone. So we actually took, I think we ended up with about 30. This was 9 years ago, there wasn't a lot of craft gin on the market. There were, we took everything from Bombay Sapphire to Plymouth Gin to Monkey 47, which was one of the only like premium craft gins that was around 9 years ago. It's a German gin. I think it's now owned by Diageo, but that tends to be the way. But yeah, all of these really amazing gins basically, and we got everyone that we possibly could together. So our dad's book club, which we always say is more of a drinking club than a book club, so they were very knowledgeable and useful. Our mum's friends, who were like parents of our friends from school, and my friends who were just off to uni. Felix was working in an advertising agency at the time, so all of his friends from there. We just got everyone together into these groups, and we made them, take it really seriously. We decanted everything out of the bottles, so people didn't know what they were drinking. We got them to blind taste everything. We did neat gin and tonics and in a cocktail, and obviously kept the cocktail the same throughout, so that people could taste different things. We got them to rank them based on how much they liked them, but then also rank them based on the qualities within them. And we did those two tests separately, but with the same gins, so that they couldn't kind of get a bias. That was like our way of trying to make it scientific. And then over time, we started to see that those few top ranking gins also had a few top ranking characteristics. And that was kind of where we went from. We found with that people would say verbally that they like a very dry traditional gin, but then consistently rank the slightly sweeter, smoother, more fruity gins at the top when they're blind tasting. And then they would always rank things like citrus and lemon peel and those sorts of tastes up high in the things that they liked about a gin when they were tasting it, and a little bit more kind of sweetness and things. So when we were developing it, we really took those things as kind of a massive guide, the main kind of guiding factor for developing our first recipe. Sorry, I talk a lot quite quickly.
Okay, I was writing my notes, I can't keep up, but in a nice way. So you got these different flavors, obviously the citrus flavor, and that was coming out the most. You got Felix working in an advertising agency, you've got the distillery license, you've got it all kind of together. How then did you get to the next phase? How did you decide this is the one we're going to go for?
Sorry,
how did you start the process of actually making it?
A couple of different things. So there's obviously the recipe factor and then the product, if you like. So the recipe factor, what we did, our control was, if we have, every time we did 5 gins, because we realized after 5 gins people stopped being able to write very good data for us. So we would do 5 gins.
Is that the kind of average threshold, by the way, 5 gins?
But bear in mind, this is 5 gins, and we would taste each one neat with tonic in a cocktail. Not full drinks, obviously, it was like small amounts of each things, but Still, yeah, after 5, people started like doodling on their questionnaires and things. So we decided to keep that. And we decided that we would have then a final round where we would make, we would take the top 5 ranking. Oh no, how did we do it? Oh yeah, no. So we took the top 1, which I know what it was, and I won't say it because there's another story and it's not very nice about it, and I don't want to be rude. But there was the top 1 that ranked across all of our kind of initial questionnaires, and we said we'll make 4 versions of our final recipe, each with just really subtle tweaks, and then we won't be happy that it's ready to launch until all 4 of our recipes rank above that one control as better, basically, in blind tasting, because if they're not all ranking above, then we're not making the best gin, basically. So we did that and then managed to get it to that point, and actually, you know, 1 or 2 were always coming out as the top 2, and then, you know, so it was really obvious to us, and they were always beating that one kind of best control, if you like. And then we were like, right, okay, we're ready to go. But the funniest thing was that our cousin, the one that came out on top, was actually one that she knew the brand, and she would swear by it and always used to say, like, that's the one, I'll never drink anything other than that, and like, I love you as my cousins, but like I'll never stop drinking that. We were like, fair enough. And we sent her away with this final tasting set. She was going away to Centre Parks, I think, and we sent her with her friends and little tasting bottles and said, can you do it with them, just for a whole new, you know, set of data sort of thing, and just to get, you know, more people to see if they like it. And she did the blind tasting, and then the one that she loved, I think, like, we called it number 5 or whatever, and she put number 5, never make this again, this is disgusting. So we were like, okay, fine. If we've knocked her favourite off the top spot, and she was passionate about it, then we must be doing something right. So that was when we kind of finally knew we were ready with our recipe. In terms of the actual business, it was just a case of, you know, we had to really just ask people, what's the smallest possible amount you can sell us of this? You know, glass bottles, labels. I remember really distinctly, and this is just like a little thing that was really satisfying for me. There was one company who sold corks, and I called the guy up, and, you know, I'm aware I sound girly, but also I then probably sounded even younger. But I was legitimately, you know, I was kind of saying, this is what we want to buy. We're looking for this sort of spec of cork, and, you know, we want to get it in this Pantone color and blah, blah, blah. And he just wouldn't give me the time of day. And he just was, I remember on the phone, he was just like really dismissive. He even laughed down the phone at me when I said something about like the quantities that we wanted. I think I was saying, like, what's your minimum order? And he was like 5,000. And I said, okay, fair enough. We were aiming to make 50 bottles a week at that point. So 5,000 is a lot of corks. And I sort of said to him, is there any possibility that we can do less than that? You know, just to start off with the view that obviously over time we'll try to order more. And he sort of laughed at that and said no. And then I spoke to somebody else, and he was like really rude, I remember. And I spoke to somebody else, and they said, oh, well, we can only make a minimum of 5,000, but we can sell you 2,500, and you can buy the other 2,500 in 6 months. And I was like, okay, well, that helps us. And that was the best we could get. And she was super helpful, and really friendly and everything else. And so we went with them. And then like 2-3 years later, this guy from that company called us up trying to get work, and trying to sell their corks. And I told this story to my mum about the fact he laughed at me. You know, obviously that had hurt my ego at the time. And a couple of years later, my mum took the phone call, and she was like, oh, it's so and so from that company. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll talk to him. And I just said, like, we're not working with you. We've seen the quality, it looks amazing. But the fact is, like, you literally laughed at me when I was asking just the options. I wasn't asking you to do me a favor. I was just asking if there were any other options and things like this. And I said, that's just not who I want to work with. And it's, you know, I'm saying this because I hope that in the future someone else comes to you and asks to work with you and you don't laugh at them, because maybe you'll feel a bit silly in a few years' time when, you know, I think you'd called us up because we'd won an award or something, and he was like, oh, I just wanted to say I'd seen this award, and also, do you need any corks? And I was like, not from you, mate. But yeah, that's by the by, but just don't laugh at people. And Yeah, so we'd got together all of the materials that we needed, and then naturally, as a bunch of teenagers launching a business, we focused exclusively on planning a launch party for several months leading up to the actual launch. um, and how could we make it the most fun? We hadn't really told any of our friends at all what we were doing. We were so worried about people kind of deciding what it was going to be like before we'd launched it and stuff, that we didn't want it to get out more before we kind of had our chance to sort of control it, if you know what I mean. We didn't want people to make a decision of what it was going to be like, what it was going to be going to look like, and things in their heads. So we literally kept it completely under wraps. Even like our closest friends, we would just say we're working on a project, until we were like weeks from launching and we actually had a product there ready to go that we could start kind of like publicizing and trying to promote. And then we launched in June 2014, and tried to, I think we did kind of go in with a bang. It was a bit surreal actually, how far it got and how quickly. I think probably the pictures of my little brother with braces on was a bit alarming for the drinks industry. So
So how many people came to your launch do, and where was it?
Oh, that was the funniest thing. So it was in a place that doesn't exist anymore. It's called Lily Gin's in town, and it's now called Fox and Cougar. It's right in the centre of by the new Tivoli cinema, right in the centre of Cheltenham. We were so worried that people wouldn't come. And when we eventually arrived, so we didn't mean to do a dramatic late entrance. We had just been trying to get everything ready, and we'd done it all ourselves. We literally ran back home, got changed. Me and my sister, we laugh about it now, but we like wore dresses that were the colour of the bottle because we like wanted the pictures to all look good. So we we tried to like match everything together. And then when we arrived, there was a queue down the road to get into the launch party, and that was like so surreal and such an exciting moment that the people were actually queuing to get in, and people like cared. It was a very surreal night. It was actually my first proper date with my husband as well. My now husband was our launch party. I just invited him, it was very all round very surreal night, but a lot of fun. And we took a first couple of orders there from some local restaurants and things.
So what would you say was your sort of key moment, or what was the biggest mistake that you guys made?
In launching a business, or just in the whole business?
Just the whole of the business. So you've launched it over a period of time. You're 9 years down the road now. You've got it into, how did you find distributors? How did you go from local bars, each one, trying to sell it? How did that bit take place? And then what was the biggest mistake you made along the journey?
So distributors wise, I'm thinking about the mistake. There's lots of things, as you can imagine.
That's how we all learn.
So distributors wise, how does anyone do it? You start Googling places, you kind of look at shops that you want to be in, you start Googling them, you find names of buyers, you try and look on LinkedIn. I didn't have a clue how to use LinkedIn at the time. I quite like LinkedIn now, I use it quite a lot, but I didn't have a clue how LinkedIn really worked at the time, but I just used to search people's names and stuff. We even used to like Facebook stalk buyers, like to try and find who they were and things, because we didn't have the contacts or the resources. We just had to do it in our own kind of way. We did go to some trade shows. We went to our first ever trade show, which it cost us thousands to do, and so that was so intimidating at the time. We met people.
Did it work for you? Did it work for you going to the trade show?
The first one we did Imbibe in London, which is a big drinks trade show. It did work for us. We actually met our first big customer there, which was the Craft Gin Club. And we became, I don't know if you know about the Craft Gin Club, but it's a big deal in the gin industry. And they send out thousands and thousands of bottles every month to people. And we were the Christmas gin in 2014, the December gin. And that was a really big deal for us. It did work. They're very difficult nowadays. They're not the same as what they were 10 years ago or 9 years ago. But they can work. It's very, certain ones work, certain don't. We've learned our lessons over time. That's something. Don't just do things because people tell you to do it. And then we really actually got like the biggest kind of change in our business was when we almost simplified. We didn't just go out looking for like big customers and trying to like pin all our hopes on one buyer and have a meeting. And we we decided that the best form of marketing for us was simply markets. We went to farmers markets, food festivals, anywhere where we could basically set up and we could talk to people so they could understand like our passion behind the brand and what was important about it and what made it sell, was the quality and the work that went into it, and only we could really get that across to people. So we would go to anywhere that would have us on a weekend, food festivals, like say, the farmers markets, everything. And we would sell throughout the day bottles of gin. So one, keep the lights on for another week. That was important. And secondly, we would say all throughout the day to people, where would you normally go to buy something like this? Or, if you're buying a really nice bottle of wine or a gift for someone, where would you normally go? And normally 1 or 2 shops in that town would kind of keep coming up. And at the end of the day, we'd go to them, or, usually the best one, because in our early days, we used to say we'll give you like town exclusivity, because that was really important to people to not have products that everyone else had. So we would go to that, one shop, and we'd say, look, we've just sold 30 bottles today. Out of those people, there's every chance that at least 5 or 6 of them are going to want to buy another bottle. If you take a case of our gin, we'll tell everyone next time we're here that you're our stockist in the town. And then, we kind of proved ourselves first, and people took us a lot more seriously then. Gin just wasn't what it is now. Craft gin wasn't a thing that people, that people thought there was an appetite for. So we had to convince people that there was, and we did that by proving ourselves first and then coming to try and sell to them afterwards. And that worked a lot more effectively than just going to try and have a meeting with someone and say, I think you could probably sell some of this. I don't know, I've got no proof, but I think you probably could. That didn't work, obviously. But we did have a couple of big meetings with big distributors early on. We were amazed we managed to pick up Harvey Nichols in our second year, I think. Wow. And then they featured us in their Christmas window display for the next 2 years running, which was like really amazing because it's iconic, obviously, Knightsbridge window displays. And yeah, I'm trying to think of the biggest mistake. We've made there's a library full of mistakes that we've made, but that's what you do. You make mistakes and then you go, well, that didn't work, and then you get up and do the next thing. And I think probably possibly one of our bigger mistakes early on was just not being daring enough, maybe. Like we had opportunities, and we thought, no, that's too risky, let's not do it, because we were so it's all so important to us. That's the thing, like it's all so important to us. We were so worried about messing it up that we didn't necessarily take these great big risks early on, but then we might not still be here if we did, so it's like it's really hard to say biggest mistakes. One of the most frustrating things about our business that has been frustrating over the years has been availability of things, and that's literally just like logistically, being able to get enough of things when we need them, being prepared enough. I think that if we could have hired someone early on in the days of Sibling just to do like stock control and all those boring bits, that would have been better, because we were trying to run the business and get the sales and create new products and go to events and all the different things, and also order the bottles and the corks and we just tried to do too much ourselves for too long. But
I think most smaller companies do that. It's a very big risk hiring people, and I think the fantastic thing that you all stuck together. Was that difficult, sticking together as a family? Were you round the dinner table arguing about, what you should be doing, or were you always really tight? Yeah,
truly. Like, I know it sounds cheesy, but truly, we it's not hard to stick together. No, we are a pretty unbreakable unit, really. We've had a huge number of things that could break a family apart. Just things like people coming into, we've had employees who've literally set up in competition whilst they've been on our payroll, and and really things that have become really personal to us over the years that as a family have divided us, because we have different personalities. We're bound to, me and Felix are more, I guess, like, I don't even know if we are more pragmatic. We're like a bit more like, okay, just get on with it, let's keep going. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. Whereas like my mum and my sister, and they will get like caught up in well, that's not fair if, you know, so and so's copied this product that we do and things. And me and Felix like, okay, then let's just do it better, like keep going, whatever. And Digby's kind of similar to us in that respect. He's always like focus on us, and so we're different. And those are the things that I think have like caused difficulties over the years, is just purely like we are all different people, and you can't just expect everyone to be the same as you, work the same as you. But no, we're a pretty unbreakable unit. We, like I say, yeah, we've been through a lot in the last 10 years, a huge amount. You know, it's not, a lot of it's, you know, personal things and stuff as well. You talk to any of our friends, and a lot of my friends say all the time, they're like, I just don't know how you guys just like keep like grinning and keep, but you do, and we have each other, and that makes it all bearable.
Did you find that these employees that trying to take some of the business, was that very hurtful? Did you take that personally, as in like a I shouldn't use put words in your mouth, like basically a stab in the heart? Because I know lots of entrepreneurs where this has happened to.
We treat everyone who works with us like they're our family, because we're a family, and we're not about to not treat each other like a family, which means that when people come in and work for us, we treat them like a family too. We have instances, obviously we're not that kind of like crazy cultish mentality, like you can't leave. We had a guy who was working for us who just left 2 weeks ago, and he left because he got offered his dream job. He was really into a sport, and he got offered a job as a coach for that sport, and we were just like so happy for him. That was amazing. And you know, he left us, and that has its own sort of pains in a business to hire new people, but we were so happy for him that he got that opportunity to do what he really wanted to do. So it's not like that we would just be unhappy of anyone leaving. But yeah, there's been a couple of people over the years that have really hurt us as a family, and this, you know, you should always keep a professional hat on, but you can't stop yourself being hurt by something, especially when you put so much into the people that you work with, and you do really care for them. But there's also been plenty of people who've come and gone, and we're like, they've just been lovely to work with whilst we've worked with them, and we always, you know, want them to thrive in whatever they do next. But yeah, definitely, it's really hard not to take things personally when they feel personal like that, especially when someone's just like pulling the wool over your eyes and making decisions to harm you. You know, that's always going to be hurtful.
Well, I've got to ask you, because we're running out of time already, would you believe?
And I'm so sorry, that's classic me.
Don't apologize at all. So I've got to ask you, because we haven't done this really, where did you go to school? And the question I have to ask is, you mentioned the entrepreneurial side in you. Has that always just been there? You've always wanted to run your own business?
Yeah, so we all went to Balcarres in Charlton Kings. Yeah, we all went to Balcarres. Digby went off to Siren College instead. He's dyslexic, so he wanted to do BTECs because it's more coursework and less exams. But we went to Balcarres, went to Norton Park Primary all the way back. And we're very much like local family. Our mum's from Cheltenham and has lived here all her life, and our dad's a complicated one, but he's lived here longer than he's lived anywhere else. And yes, the entrepreneurial side. So at the end of Balcarres, that was kind of like my first like toe in the water of business. Was we did, all of us, Felix, then Clarice, then me, all did Young Enterprise. Do you know Young Enterprise?
Mm-hmm.
It's the like school project thing, but it's like run a kind of a attempt at running a business, and they kind of try to make it as realistic as possible, and you have to like do a report and publish you know, all those sorts of things, and you have to do like presentations. And we did it, but like we took it seriously. Like we didn't, if I've got an idea, I'm like a bullet at a gate. I just can't, you can't stop me. And that's not a brag. I think that's a fault. I just am one track mind when I'm onto something. And we did that.
There's nothing wrong with that. I tell you, it's the only way you can drive stuff forward.
Yeah. But we ended up going all the way with it. So we won like locally, and then we won for the UK. Our business won, and it was me and some of my friends. One of the girls who I did it with is still one of my best friends. I was at her hen party on Saturday. But we have had a group of us. I think there was like 12 in total, but there was about 5 of us who were like, you know, super into it. And we won for the UK, and then we went to the European competition, and then we didn't win the European competition. We came the worst place. We came 4th, but we did win a big prize within the competition that was separate, that was called, it was like sponsored by FedEx, and it was called something like the it was called like Global Enterprise or something, and it was basically like for the most awareness of like your business and its impact on the world. And like, because we had something that imported food products from Africa, and we had like a lot of social enterprise factors of it, and so this award went to a business that like had considered basically the bigger impact of their business, not just themselves, sort of thing. So I ended up going from that to work shadow a guy called Xavier Prats-Monet, who was the head of education at the European Commission at the time that I shadowed him. And yeah, it was just like incredible experience. And that all just came from running that little business. And I think that was like, you know, once you do that and you see where it can take you. And I know that like working in companies, you also get amazing opportunities through employers and things like that. But it just felt to me like working for yourself, the opportunities and the doors that you open for yourself are even more exciting, because you get to kind of, yeah, you get to be the person who decides that. So yeah, it was that was really cool. And that was kind of our first step into it. And my brother and sister both had, Felix did really well in it, Clarice did really well in it. I did the best. But we all did the competition and we all did well.
Well, I've got to ask you because we are coming to the end really. So Cicely, what are your top 3 business tips, please?
Okay, so my first one, I always think this is really important, is don't try and be cool about it. That's like the biggest thing. And maybe that's just like a young person business thing, that because I started off young, but like stop trying to be cool. No one cares. Put it on your social media, get a LinkedIn, like just go big or go home. Like don't try and be subtle about it. Nobody cares what you're doing. Everyone just cares about what they're doing. So no one thinks you look silly if you turn up to an event and no one else comes. If you set up a market stall and you're selling like a product, craft products, whatever, you know, and no one comes, like who cares? Just keep going. Like don't try and be cool about it. Don't try and suddenly be this impressive business person when you're just starting out, because that's just not going to happen. And with that, kind of on the same note, like also just be a nice person. Like don't think that this absolute nonsense of like the Young Apprentice, I'm a ruthless business person, just drives me mad. Ruthless will get you nowhere. Ruthless will just make you lots of enemies. Be a nice person, be kind, and be, you know, as you would like to be treated yourself. You know, in business you're not suddenly a different alter ego person. So yeah, don't try to be cool and be nice. And the other thing that's like so prominent at the moment is this chasing of hype and trying to go viral and you know, all those sorts of things. Just strive for longevity in a business. Strive to be stable and hard to break, and have longevity as a business, because the kind of trajectory of a business after it's reached that 10-year point and stuff is so much more important than in your first year. You suddenly, you know, you put something on Instagram or TikTok and it goes viral, and suddenly you've got, you know, tons and tons of orders that you probably can't fulfill. Means tons of negative reviews on your products, probably cutting corners to try and make the products faster and send them out faster and everything else. And suddenly you have this massive hype, amazing, loads of people ordering your products, and it lasts for all of a couple of days, and then you overinvest in warehousing staff, all these different things, and within a year your business has gone under. So don't strive for hype. Hype can be amazing in small doses, but massive hype can also absolutely ruin a business. So strive for long-term steady success and build it up, because yeah, that's just like such a young person mentality now, like that you go on Love Island and you become famous and you get sponsored and then you're a millionaire. Like that's such a tiny percentage of people, and we've seen in real life how badly that can end as well. So if you're trying to start a business, don't do it for notoriety, do it for longevity and for your own career and for a stable future and all those sorts of things, because the rest of it's basically nonsense.
Okay, and the
third one, sorry, I'm speeding up, is trust your instinct. Nobody knows your business better than you. Don't follow advice if it doesn't sit right with you. We've done that many, you know, events and opportunities that people have told us to do, and we've thought, I'm not sure if that's right for us, but because they're more successful than us or they've been doing it longer, we listen to them instead of trusting our instinct. And without fail, it's always been a terrible decision. And when we've said no to things or done things our way or changed the way we've done it because it's what sits right with us, be it ethically, financially, you know, just pure kind of gut feel, it's always been the right thing to do. And that's just, I just think basically like stop taking advice. I'm giving advice now, but just try not to take advice. do what feels right for you, really is, I think, key.
Okay, unfortunately, we've run out of time, which is a real shame because I could talk for so much longer. Cicely Elliot-Berry, thanks for joining Punchline Talks today. All the very best for the future.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.